Good morning and welcome back to the lab. Sorry if it's not morning where you are. Well, listen, we are back with Dr. Small and a stronger foundation, and we're still on the series. Do you really want to succeed? And remember, I'm really speaking to parents of children. So where we mean, do you really want your child to succeed? All right. There are lots of programs out there for adults. I can recommend a few. I really enjoy listening to motivational videos by certain people who are really good at it. Like I think Steve Harvey's pretty good. Denzel Washington's pretty good at what he does, and Joel Osteen. Those are some of my favorites, and I listen to them depending on how I'm feeling. Okay, if I want to be angry, sometimes you have people in your life that's trying to distract you and derail you from your purpose. People that want to take advantage of you. So if I want to get to the point where I set my face and I make up my mind that hey, I'm just going to focus on becoming my best self and not just jumping every time someone rings a bell, then I listen to Denzel. He'll tell it as it is. And I love Steve Harvey's story. He's always talking about how he has come back 3 different times. He's lost everything 3 times. And that means a lot to me because it shows me that, it's an example, that we don't have to be afraid to lose because sometimes you have to lose when you're on your way to winning. Okay. So I enjoy his stories of how he struggled and lost everything multiple times and just came back. I thought it was awesome. And Joel Osteen, when I need a nice, safe word that has biblical principles behind it, I listen to Joel Osteen. And of course, I'm always excited about my girl, Harriet Tubman, right? Because when you talk about someone who was brave and courageous, and just a prisoner of hope. We'll talk a little bit about being a prisoner of hope eventually, but Miles, she has really inspired me as a regular human being that has just done the most. So I just love her. So listen, welcome back. And in the last session, I did promise that I was going to discuss how learning is impacted. Right, here we go. How learning is impacted by these systems. You have the limbic system, which is the emotional control center in our brain, or let's say of our system. And we have the frontal lobe, which is the executive control center. That's the portion of our brain that deals with the sensible stuff, the common sense stuff, rational stuff, critical thinking, deep reasoning, and deep focus. Yes, and we all have it. Remember, children have the same exact brain and the same different structures and the same properties and elements, and they all have the same functions. Eventually, we'll talk about, how they develop and the speed at which they develop and how that also impacts learning in a huge, huge way. Not just learning, just everything that happens to us. It goes right back to the development process of these systems, as a matter of fact. All right, so I'm going to get right to it because if we've only been together a little time in my lab, probably maybe now 8 sessions altogether, but you probably have noticed, oh, I can stretch things out, right? And I always tell people when they meet me, I said, listen, you start talking about my passion and you're going to be in trouble. One time there was this pastor guy kind of insulted me a bit. And, because I've learned how to just, sometimes listen. You don't have to always be talking. And you haven't seen that quiet side yet because we have to communicate. But I remember we were also friends. He was a pastor, but we were friends as well. And then, one day he asked a question. It happened to be along a line that I just love, probably what we're talking about right now. And I went on and on and on and on. And he says, wow, you really got a lot to say about the things you know. And that was that was a swipe, right? I guess in other words, it was like, you don't talk about a lot of other things. You don't, almost like I'm not well-rounded enough. So, that was insulted. But this is your passion. And when you find your passion, that's what you're going to talk about. I don't waste time with a lot of other stuff that is not serving my purpose. Okay. Because I've learned that's the secret to success. Okay. Anyways, let's move on. So we want to talk about the limbic system and how it impacts learning, because that's what we said in the very last session that we would pick up there. So we remember the different function of the structures within the limbic system. We could do that fast. Remember the way our brain is, sensory information comes to the human brain. Okay. And the way it enters is through the thalamus of our brain, which is a part of the limbic system. And except for smell, all of those sensory input information is coming through the thalamus. So as they come through the thalamus is going to, they're going to be disseminated to different parts of the brain for processing wherever that particular information is supposed to be processed. That's where it's going to be disseminated to. Okay, it's going to pass through the hypothalamus. And hypothalamus, I feel like this would be a better time now to share a little more, because, we don't want to do information overload. And I've talked about it, but sometimes I go really fast and I have to skip certain things because, that's how the brain learns. You want to just build little schemas, and then eventually we can develop a little more. Hypothalamus, basically what it does is it monitors the systems, the internal systems. We have different types of systems inside of us. And remember, I told you it mainly functions in making sure we have balance. And we want equilibrium all the time. We want balance. And so in order to maintain that balance, whatever happens to us, remember I said if we get hot and the hypothalamus is monitoring that system, it's going to allow that system to release certain hormones that's going to cause the body to cool back down. And if I don't know how it works, if we're freezing, I guess it's monitoring that system to help to try and bring our body. One thing you can do, you may be stimulated to put on a jacket. Okay, so it's just the hypothalamus is going to make little suggestions to get warm. I'm cold, get warm. I'm hungry, feed me. Okay, and I'm hot, get a fan if we can get something else. Okay, so that's what it does. It monitors internal systems to maintain the normal state of homeostasis, because the brain likes to keep the body in perfect balance. Okay, so I already explained that hormones are being released in order for that to happen, to moderate the different body systems. That includes body temperature, that includes sleep. Okay, so I want to add something else today. Today I want to say that concentration of the cognitive processing of curriculum material, like we're talking about school now. So concentration of cognitive processing of curriculum material is difficult when system is out of balance. The main function of your brain, okay, its main function is not to learn that third language. Its main function is not to learn how cellular respiration occur. That's not the main. The main is to keep the body and all the bodily systems in perfect balance, equilibrium. So whenever that is off, everything else takes a back seat. Priority is balance for your brain. Okay. So when people are ill and sick and have certain type of illnesses, maybe that's what's thrown off. But remember, we stay focused, and you promise to keep me focused. All right. And so that's what happens with the hypothalamus. But remember that for our discussion, that's important to remember. That even though that's a function of the hypothalamus, and you might be in a learning situation, in a learning environment, and you're supposed to be focused. Okay, remember that's what's happening with our frontal lobe: planning, critical thinking, focus, all of that, right? That's only going to happen if this system is happy. And I'll unpack it. I will. Okay. But if you have the hypothalamus sensing, oh my God, I'm hot, you're not going to learn very well. It's hard to focus if you're in a room and it's hotter than room temperature. If it's not at room temperature, you're going to be uncomfortable. If it's too cold, you're going to be uncomfortable. So instead of learning, your hypothalamus is going to be busy. It's going to be going towards the brain systems and saying, excuse me, listen, teacher, one moment. Okay. We need to get this system back in order. So learning can still occur. But what I'm saying is naturally, that's what's going to happen. Focus is going to go away from any type of cognitive or learning opportunities, and it's going to go towards regaining homeostasis. Okay. Any neurosurgeon or scientist will be able to back me up. Okay. Of course, much much better quality, but they'll explain that the concept of this discussion is accurate. So you're trying to learn. So if there's anything happening where homeostasis is threatened or challenged in any way, this is going to take a back seat. This is priority. So you can imagine being in a classroom setting for this child, and again, maybe they're hot or they're hungry, or don't forget our friend here that we're getting to, amygdala. Amygdala says, listen, that stuff looks difficult. It's hard. We don't have a schema. Shut that down. Let's keep it moving. What's next? What's going on outside the window? What's Susie wearing today? Okay, well, what's going on? That doesn't match, right? So that, yeah, big time distraction and fear. Fear is the one that encapsulates the amygdala. All right, so we're at the hypothalamus, and its role is to maintain homeostasis, so you understand. All right, there's going to come a time where I'm no longer just standing here pointing at stuff. We're still building, and I should have said, remember, we do have those 8 overview videos for anyone who's new to our lab. You got to go back and watch those videos because we develop these concepts. I still go over them a lot, but you don't want to miss anything. So I would start at the beginning. You got the point. Good. So homeostasis, priority. And then we have the hippocampus. And remember, the hippocampus, it's very involved in learning because it's going to consolidate all the information. And I feel like I'm explaining it in layman's terms, right? So you have it where the hippocampus now is busy searching. It's constantly searching your brain for the different schemas. So as a teacher introduce a concept, imagine that the hippocampus is the one that's going to say, all right, let's see, the teacher introduced this concept, unlike fractions. So basically, the hippocampus have to go looking for, I would say, fractions in general. Just fraction in general, just numerator over a denominator situation. That's what it's going to go and look for, because before you get to unlike fractions, or before you get to improper fraction, you had to start at fractions. Remember, right down at the bottom. This is remembering if you cannot see it on our taxonomy. So that's where the hippocampus is going to go, and it's going to say, okay, and you could say basically it relays or connects. There's already a house for fraction in general. So this is unlike fraction or improper fraction. So it's going to be added to that schema, or that little house. I tell children they're called like houses. And that's where that's going to go to help develop it. Remember it. If you don't know what a fraction is, unlike fraction is going to be like a grenade coming at your brain. Okay, when there's no little house there already, your brain have to do a different type of I won't say storing, but planting. Let's call it planting, okay? You could plan it according to a simulation if you already have a schema. And if you don't already have a schema, you basically have to build a foundation. And that's what the brain, it doesn't always enjoy doing that because it, of course, building a foundation takes time, it takes work. It's always better if you already knew a little bit of something and then it's just adding. But when you have to build, you have to do the accommodation, and that's just more work. Okay. It's like if you're building a house, like I always say, you can't put in the window before you even have the foundation, the flat part of the house to build on top of. Okay. Wonderful. I feel like we're doing great. And so the hippocampus, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say. It's involved in generating meaning by constantly checking information from the working memory. So, because remember now, everything comes in, eventually gets to the working memory, and then maybe short-term memory, and then the hippocampus is going to be checking the working memory constantly and saying, okay, yes, you, okay, there's a schema over there, okay, go there. There's a schema for you. What are you subtracting across zeros? Okay, yes, we did that. We were actually at the understanding level. There is a schema. You go over there. But when there's no schemas, then it just has to plant it a different way. That just creates a schema for it. Okay. And then we get to the amygdala, and its role is in fear. Remember, it functions to regulate the interaction between the environment that can affect survival, fight, flight. Okay. So as the signals come through, it's going to impact the person's interaction with the environment or with the skill, So you have people that walk in and they're like, when something is strange, you're like, I don't know, not sure how I should respond. Okay. But, so you're in survival mode, should I fight, flight? Should I engage? Should I freeze? So in new situations, we're always having to be aware of all of that. So now I can get to my point. How does the limbic system impact learning in a classroom? Okay, simple. I've already said it. So we have the frontal lobe that's dealing with the focus. Remember the cerebellum and the cerebrum, they're dealing with movement. Okay, and between the two of them, you got thinking, you got memory, you got speech, you got muscular movements, you have coordination of movement, you have fine tuning of your thoughts and balance and posture. Okay, between the cerebellum and the cerebrum, that is. And then our brainstem. Remember, the brainstem was involved in regulating life-sustaining functions like breathing and heart rate. And breathing, heart rate. Sometimes I don't remember all of them, but of course, when if it impacts your heart rate and your breathing, then you're going to have to deal also with your blood pressure is going to also increase, right? So just imagine if the priority is homeostasis and the focus is on making sure all of the bodily system. That means if you got to use the bathroom, focus is going to be impacted. It's very difficult. Okay, it's possible, and there's a time when you'll be able to manage, because you understand that this side is required for your success, right? You have to be able to focus even when this system is out of control. And if you learn how to control this system, that's when you can achieve greatness. Because trust me, Those famous people that you know, let's say they play ball. Sometimes they got a bad stomach ache. Sometimes they've broken an ankle. Just whatever. But that doesn't stop them. Okay. This system is like, oh, the pain. There's, let's get us back to homeostasis. Let's deal with that. But, great people, they just work through pain. They work through discomfort. It could be freezing in there, but they apply certain mindset strategies to keep this system submissive. Try to get a kid to do that. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. So that is how this system impacts the learning that happens in school, which results in the gap, all the gaps in the foundation, because if they're not being taught, and that's what the ASP4K is, Academic Success Plan for Kids. What it is, it's our way of teaching our children how to align with success before they turn 55 years old. Because if we feel like that's unethical and it's robbing them of their future, because as I've stated, what if they do have the cure for cancer, diabetes, and some of these illnesses that, seem like a cure should have already been discovered, but it's not. So we believe that they can learn it, and we've shown it, we've proven it. We have scholars is what we call them. See, because you're preparing for life. And I'm going to stay focused, because I have done so well staying focused, because sometimes I say certain things and it just triggers the other topic. And I say, no, we'll get to the other topic. We're going to stay focused here. And so then the brain stem. So if your amygdala is, saying, that's dangerous, stay away from that. Remember, what it does is that it interprets things that are a threat to survival. And if it's saying that this new concept is a threat, then it's going to send the whole system. You're going to have the hypothalamus trying to retain homeostasis. And that's where all the focus is going to go away from here. This will not be prioritized. And a lot of situations for our children are causing them to lose focus while the teacher is teaching. The teacher is teaching, understand, apply, evaluate, analyze, and they're doing the least. They're coming home and they're not practicing. They're not using the digital resources the way it was intended to maximize the learning. Okay. And that's how it happens. Basically, that is prioritized over this. And if you can get it to reverse this natural process, remember, this is natural. It will focus too. It was a natural thing to focus too. If that doesn't take over, if that doesn't go into panic and say, oh boy, something's happening, this looks dangerous. And then this guy's like, okay, let's fix it. Okay. And that is how the limbic system impacts or inhibits learning. I think I can mention one more thing before we wrap up this particular episode. I've decided to make the episode shorter. So yeah, I guess we got to talk about neurons a little bit, because, neurons are the communication elements in our brain, right? So neurons communicate with neurons. They're not joined together completely. They're not connected directly. Neurons are separated and connected. They have gaps between them, and they communicate through electrical impulses or electrical signals through their dendrites. So you have neuron And then you have these like branches that sticks out around the neurons. Those are called dendrites. And that is how the neurons communicate with each other. So when you're processing information or learning, then the neurons have to communicate, right? So if there's no distraction, if there's no distraction caused by the system here, then the neurons, the learning is going to be able to flow in the classroom. No distraction, no interruption from the system. Every child would be able to learn perfectly. So as the neurons communicate, right, they release brain chemicals that are called neurotransmitters. Some examples of neurotransmitters are acetylcholine, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. You've heard of some of them. All right. And when they're released, they have different types of impact on our bodies. Okay. Our favorite one is, I think endorphins, right? Or is it the dopamine? Dopamine is really cool because it affects learning, and it's involved in pleasure. We like to feel good. It's like one of those feel good endorphins that's relief from pain. That's the one. Yeah. And, endorphins, relief from pain and the feelings of well-being and pleasure. That's the one. So it's both of them. It's endorphins, and dopamine deals, a little bit with pleasure, but definitely endorphins. We all like those feelings where you just feel good, feel well-being. And that's why some people get involved with certain stimulants to have that lasting feeling of endorphins. All right. Relief from pain, feelings of, I just feel good. This feels right. So of course, that's what the kiddos like too, though. They want that all the time. And that's why all the new educational programs and companies, they keep coming out with these learning programs that just stimulate endorphins all day long. The kids just feel good. They just feel good all day long. Learning is good. It's fun. But here's a problem. You see, school needs to prepare children to succeed in life. And realistically, come on, you don't love your job. The only way you can love your job is if your job is your purpose. That's the only way. If your job is not your purpose, you're not going to feel fulfilled. You're not going to be excited to get up every single day and go to a job that's just a job. And that's why we're trying to prevent our children from growing up just to go through the motion. That episode is coming up. It is. It is. Somebody give me a round of applause. I'm staying focused. And so the neurons now, see, the neurons, that's how they communicate, is through electrical impulses through their dendrites. But here's an important factor about the neuron communication, is that when they get to a certain point, okay, my alarm says it's time to stop. They get to a certain point, and they get to a certain point, and they either ignite, let's call it, it's stimulating. In both cases, it's stimulation. So it could either ignite or inhibit the neighboring neuron. So for your child to learn, you need these neurons to be on flow. Just keep moving. You know what I'm saying? You need it to be like a system. Rolling, just rolling, right? And that's what you want between the neuron. You don't want it to be inhibited, okay? Because then that means it stops. What do we want our neurons to do? When it's processing is processing. Imagine you're cooking your food, and all of a sudden it just stops. It's not what we want. It stops your cooking, right? We want our neurons to keep jumping from one neuron to the next. And I'm talking about fast. I mean, I can't move that fast. These are electrical, okay? So it's like, okay, so that's what you want with learning. So it can either ignite or it can inhibit the transition between the neurons. So what would cause that to happen? If we have a distraction, if we have an interruption from the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, the neurons are not going to flow. They're going to be interrupted. And when that's interrupted, learning is interrupted. So you got the point. I'm really wrapping this up right now. You got the point that this is the executive control center of our brain that is involved in planning, critical thinking, focusing, learning in general. This needs to be intact for learning to happen properly. Now you might be wondering, why do I have the limbic system here? So that's the last thing we could talk about. I wanted to show you that the location of the limbic system is between the cerebrum and the brain stem, according to our sources. I'm not saying it's directly, okay? We understand that you can have other structures also in between, but it's between the cerebrum, which deals with the focusing, the planning, and whatever else needs to happen because when you're learning, all of that needs to be active. And if the cerebrum, which is involved in thinking, memory, because remember, they have to remember. Learning, you don't learn if you can't remember. So the cerebrum, memory, thinking, speech, muscular movement, and you have the limbic system between that and between the brainstem, which is involved in the life-sustaining operations like increasing your heart rate, raised blood pressure. Did I say breathing already? Okay, so imagine it's between there. So whenever this acts up, can you see whenever the limbic system acts up, right? It's right there between the cerebrum and the brainstem. Whenever the limbic system decides, oh, this is a threat. Don't you see how everything shuts down and your child wouldn't learn not one thing that day? So when I have parents that says to me, oh, the kids are in school 6 hours a day. Oh my gosh, give them a break. I tell them, in the 6 hours that they're in school, you're lucky if they have 2 hours of actual focus. Remember, sometimes I'll tell you, remember, you're speaking to Dr. Small. Okay? Everything that I speak about, they're evidence. I've taught classes where the children have 90 minutes of independent reading, 90 minutes of independent reading. And you'll go by a child, and I'm telling you, this is what you'll see. All right, let's use our mentor text. And they're supposed to be reading this book, and because they have 90 minutes of uninterrupted reading time, independent reading time, this is what they go to their nooks. Nobody bothers them to go to their nook. This is what you're going to see. Book is upside down, and this is a kid. Not reading a thing. They're not reading. That's whole 90 minutes. Does your school have that? The school that your child goes to, 90 minutes of uninterrupted? Who's listening to them? Let me tell you something. More than the average child. More than the average child. How do I know? Because I have the data. More than the average child. If you don't listen to them reading, They're not going to read a word, but they sure enjoy that 90 minutes of just chilling in their nooks. Sounds cute, right? Put them in nook. All right. So the book that I'm holding, I may as well talk about it. You already know this is our mentor text at a stronger foundation for the academic success plan for kids. That academic success plan for kids is a plan that will prevent a child from trying to relive their childhood when they're adults. It's going to get them ready to walk right into their ideal destiny and their real purpose instead of spending decades being lost, trying to find themselves, working some random job that they, can I say the word hate? You know, it makes you miserable. You come home, you know, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But I guess part of why this happened to be my purpose in life and my mission, because I remember when I was, I don't know how old I was, but I was up there when I learned that I was born on purpose to fulfill a purpose. And I thought, oh my gosh, how much further would I have been if I knew that? But because I was a kid, no one told me, right? You have all these adults that's listening to motivational tape over and over and over again, like all day long, they're listening to motivation, trying to become their best self. And that's good. That's good. Because it's never too late. And you better keep chasing that purpose, because until you do, you're never going to have peace. Okay. So you have to keep doing it. It's just a shame when you have to do it as an adult instead of now raising your children, teaching them how to find their purpose before they, you know, get to that stage. All right. And don't forget, we also have the activity guide that goes with it. But the first step in getting your children to succeed, you have to develop their mindset. That's the first step. I would never even tell you that if you want your child to succeed, all you have to do is educate them, because education alone will never, ever align a person with their success. Never. Never. Okay. You need a balance between education and mindset, and you need the proper balance. And a stronger foundation has the strategy, we have the ingredients. And in another session, I'm going to talk about what makes us so special. You might be thinking, there are lots of programs out there. Why would yours be the one to work? We'll talk about that in another session, because we're practicing focus, aren't we? Yes, we are. Okay, so that really concludes it. I'm not sure what else I can say, but I did explain to you that based on the limbic system behavior, based on what it does, if it's not happy, if a homeostasis is threatened at all, and what threatens homeostasis for a kid is not necessarily what threatens homeostasis for an adult. Remember, a child. You know, if Susie on the playground said, we're not friends anymore, this is not, go back to classroom, no learning is going to occur, because now we have an emotional situation, and it's perceived as an emotional situation. The amygdala says this is a life and death situation. Our survival is threatened because now somebody's not my friend. And that's what happens to kids. Or this guy, the little boy that she loves, he doesn't like her, he likes somebody else. Or maybe the little girl said, you've got the cooties. And all of these little things sound silly to an adult, but it shuts this down. So what do? You can't hardly prevent that. You know, things that's going to happen with a kid is going to happen because based on their developmental stage, they're going to go through different types of experiences. So that's normal. But a supplemental situation is what's going to keep them on track and aligned. Okay. So the norm of what happens between their systems here as children is going to generate a shaky foundation full of gaps, right? A stronger foundation is that supplement, is that bridge that's going to still help them to develop a very solid foundation. And it's essential to develop a stronger foundation. And the way that works is you shouldn't have kids at 12th grade still learning skills and standards, and 10th grade and ninth grade. Okay. Way before 8th grade, a child should already have completed their academic obligations to become a success. That's what I'm saying to you. If they're on their way to success, way before 12th grade, they should not only have a perfect education of all the curriculum, all of that stuff should have been finished by a certain age, or the stronger foundation does. Should be finished, and they should have already experienced and gone through a period of innovation. Because innovation is what's going to help them to understand their purpose in life. It's a training that we give to our kids, our scholars. Because education, they shouldn't spend, they say 12 years, I meant 12th grade, but they shouldn't spend all this time in school from kindergarten to 12th grade, right? Isn't that like, yeah, they shouldn't spend all that time just trying to learn fractions on like fractions, sine and cosine, algebra, quadratic formula. I mean, they're ready so much earlier than skills are introduced for them. But what happens is that a lot of times our kids, they miss this period completely before they graduate and have never gone through their innovation period. Never. And they're graduates. And you're graduating at 18 years old, you're like almost an adult. Like, when do you prepare our children to succeed in the real world? All right, so that concludes this session. We've really talked well. I think we've done a great job explaining. Please tell others about our lab. Invite them over, but remind them they have to first watch those 8 overview videos to be able to follow along well. Because see, now you're a pro, but when they come, it's going to be like, wait, what are we talking about? So thank you for joining me today. Dr. Small will miss you as you go. Please remember to continue. And I kind of feel like we're done with this series. Do you really want your child to succeed? But I think I'll come back and just do a quick final overview of this series, and then that will end it for us. All right. If I decide to move on, that's fine too, because I feel like we've done a really great job. I've beat every life out of do you want to succeed. All right. So maybe we'll come back with one more on this topic, or maybe not. Otherwise, I will see you in our next episode. Thank you for joining me. You have a wonderful, wonderful day or moment if you're going right to the next video. We'll see you later. Thank you. Later. Bye.